growth regulators from last week. So last week, you you had been introduced to a number of growth regulator classes. Okay, so remember, okay, all of these that you've learned so far: auxin, cytokinins, gibberellins, athelins, and abscisic acids. Some of them are promoting, some of them are inhibiting. Okay, hormones are not all the time promoting something, right? And you also learn that in addition to these 5 classes of hormones, there are other substances or growth regulators, such as jasmonic acid, salicylic acid, and what else? Brasinosteroids and strigalactones. Okay, so the truth is, this with you now, this is the last time we are using this. So for the coming junior, the notes will be different because I want to include all these brasinosteroids, strigalactones into the main classes of hormones, meaning that no longer 5. The primary classes are now 7. Okay, right. So remember, okay, when we talk about things like auxin, cytokinin, that is just the general term of the growth regulators. Okay, under each of these, auxin, cytokinin, gibberellins, and so on, they have their own members. Okay, so when we talk about, okay, I applied auxin to my plant, actually the story has not finished. What kind of auxin? At least you know some auxins are natural, some are synthetic. Okay, for example, the gibberellins, or the short of it in plant science, they call it GA. There are many GA. Okay, I think easily up to number 50. But the one that we usually use in agriculture is GA3, gibberellic acid 3. Okay, you see the number that shows you there are many variants. Right. So when you talk about you are using specific hormone, you are not referring to any specific one hormone, but a class of hormones. Okay, which type, that is for further explanation. Right. So let's continue with auxin. So auxin was actually first the idea of growth promoting substance by Charles Darwin. Do you know Charles Darwin? What he's famous for? Evolution, the father of evolution. I got to spend quite some time in Darwin's house when I was maybe your age. What did I do? Wandering around. Actually, it was my we had exam that day, but were not told about it. So we spent about the whole day in Darwin's estate. It's a huge place. So Darwin, he had 10 children, 10, 11 children. Kind of rich, yeah, kind of rich. But some of his children died or got some defects because he married his first cousin. This is why first cousin marriage, avoid that, because you're going to get, inbred babies somehow, right? So the thing with Darwin is he followed somebody from the Navy. I think the name is Captain Fitzwilliam, to travel across the globe on ship from ports to ports across the world, not only to Europe, to Africa, to India, Australia, and so on. So being a scientist, while other people are busy doing all this, pirate stuff, maritime work, he observed that from places to places, organisms, sometimes they are similar, sometimes they are different, and there are patterns to follow. Okay, for example, when he went up to do some hiking at a rather taller peaks, like in the hill or mountain, he could find the remnants or fossils of seashells. So you are on the top of a hill. Why would you find a seashells? Right. To start with, no seaham got any legs to crawl up going to the mountain. Seaham. What's a seaham? Not see. Cockles. What's that in Malay? I forgot the Malay. You know, not ketam. Kerang. Siham lah, siham. And so that's one thing that he noticed. Then he also noticed he found similar birds but in different lands, and these birds, they start to have variation. You see, variations in the way the beaks are formed, meaning that the birds that are close to the sea, the beaks are shaped differently compared to the birds that are more terrestrial. So they were all of different morphologies. And you see, throughout this, he also observed something about the plant, okay, of which it didn't end just during his journey around the maritime world. He carried the plant observation and experiment back to his home, just to study about the plant further. You can look at this name, Phalaris canarensis, meaning that Darwin visited Canary Island. Do you know where Canary Island is? Spain. Look it up. Polish up on your geography, right? So with this canary grass, he found out that you can cut off the tip of the canary grass and make a few things to happen. Okay, so these are the things that he pretty much did at first by himself in the 1880s. You got the coleoptile of a grass, light, then it will start to bend towards the light to the left. But when you cut the tip, nothing happened. It stays on growing in the erect manner. And then when you put the cap at the top here, without cutting or decapitate the tip of the coleoptile, still nothing happened. Okay, opaque means light cannot go through. Like the glass is transparent, right? So opaque, you can't see what's beyond that. And then if it's transparent, the pattern of the grass tip coleoptile following the light control here. So that was interesting, but of course he died, because you have to die somehow. And that was continued by after him by some scientists, Boyce and Jansen. I'm not English. Darwin was British, English person. So he took Darwin experiment and extended it further with this coleoptile. He put the top of it, but connects between the top part and the bottom part with a gelatin blob, meaning that it's permeable. So the theory was, if something coming up from the top, it can, if it going down, and since this thing is permeable, the pattern would follow the control. So that followed. But if you put like a mineral glass, like a mica, of course, there's no compound that can go through it, right? It's not permeable, like a membrane. So it stays like pretty much like this opaque cap. So what does this tell you? Remember that this was over 100 years ago. So they postulated that there must be something in the tip of the plant that got released or sensing the light, telling the plant to bend this way or that way. It must come from the tip. It cannot be from the bottom or from the middle, right? So, and later on, people found out, after people managed to isolate this compound, they call it auxine, which from the Greek word means to grow. So it was actually not isolated from plant, it was isolated from premium urine. Yes, you got auxine as well. Remember I said there are many kinds of auxine? You got it too. All right. Do you have insulin? Do cows got insulin? Cow, you know? Cow got insulin or not? Do you know cow? New, not neuron. Yes, it's got the insulin, but insulin of different variants. But the function is similar, still hormone, okay? To metabolize sugar in the blood. So the term auxine that they found, and then later on they found out the natural form of some of the first auxine was IAA, indole 3-acetic acid. Okay, so this is the first form. You can buy this, and this is quite easy to find. Okay, so they are generally produced by apices of the stem and roots, where they migrate from regions of their action. So we'll see again here later soon. The auxine is not localized in one location. It can travel, and there's a direction that it follows, right? Right. So this is what happened with the experiment by the Boyson and Jessen. So he cut the tip, and this tip, if something was coming down from it, would be absorbed by the agar, and this agar now full of auxine. So he transferred the agar to the decapitated coleoptile, and you can see that the moment this is transferred to the cut coleoptile, remember, okay, this is decapitated, no longer the tip, the pattern of the bending would still follow because the auxine can diffuse, meaning that the auxine always going down. So this is called as polar auxine transport. Okay, polar auxine transport. You see, in plant, there's a direction of movement according to the plane of the body. So if this is ground, so this is your plant, there's a leaf there, and you got your root. This is the junction here. Junction, we call it root shoot junction. Root shoot junction. So so you got two meristems. You have to learn about this. The first meristem is at the tip here. This is shoot apical meristem, and then there's another meristem here, which is root apical meristem. Right. When something travels from the tip of the meristem of the shoot going down, this direction we call it basipetal. Sorry. This marker is not good. Basipetal. Okay, right. But when something is traveling backwards from the base towards the top, we call it acropetal. Basipetal simply means towards the base, meaning that auxine that is produced here going to the base. And this is the basis of polar auxine transport. Right. What about here? That's another apical meristem, remember? You only got one meristem, your your bone marrow, right? But in plants, we got multiple meristem. There's another one meristem here. If the movement, the auxine is produced here, and then the movement is going here, this way, from the apical to the base, this is called basipetal now. And whatever coming from here to the meristem is called the acropetal. You see, it's inverse. Okay, so don't get it wrong. Right. So why this is important? Even though technically all plants cells can produce auxin, sometimes the auxin will travel the shortest distance to cause any changes. Okay, it's true that I said last week, plants do not have any glands. Okay, you produce growth hormone in your pituitary gland, then it will travel to the rest of your body. But your circulation is super fast because you got your heart actively pumping your blood. Do plants have heart to pump? No. So whatever is closest to the site of action will be the contributor to the auxin. Right. Okay, let's see. So the tip of the grass now, after it has been placed on a gel, a gelatin or a jelly, whatever the content of the tip of the tip now can transfer to the jelly, and then this jelly should have all the auxin, because remember, the tip is actually this guy here. Once you cut it, you got this, right? Then you put your jelly here. So if whatever auxin coming, is it going up or going down? Going down. So this will be filled by auxin. Right. So that's what they did in this experiment. Even though these coloptiles have been completely decapitated, but they have been placed with this auxin-rich jelly block, the curvature or the phototropism would still follow. So that's how people know auxin is the one responsible for all this bending, a curvature or the plant. Right. So why does it bend? This you need to know. You see, when light coming this way, you would see that auxin actually have this tendency to move away from the light. Okay, it's not sun loving. Okay, it moves away to the opposite side, which is having less light intensity. So what happens is, when the opposite side, the darker side, has more auxin, this side will grow more. When it grows more, compared to the opposite side that is facing the light, then that's why you get this curvature, because one side is growing faster and longer from the other side. If both sides, left and right, growing at the same rate, it will have a straight morphology. But when side is growing faster and at a rapid rate, it will make a turn. So that's why it's giving you the illusion the plant is searching for light. It's actually auxin shying away from the light. From your eyes, you see that it's like it's searching for the light, right? The truth is, you know the reason now. It's the auxin. Auxin is shying away, making the darker side to be filled of it, and the darker side grow more. All right. There are many instances in nature. You have this differential growth. For example, you see flower petals. Yeah. Some flower petals are very ruffly, like ruffle. It's ruffle. You got that texture because some cells growing faster, some are growing slower. So some are elongated, some are still in the original size. So you get this pattern of waving petals. Okay, so that's the beauty of the nature. Right. Obviously, there are many kinds of auxin. There are native or natural auxin, and also there are synthetic auxin. So in agriculture, usually you will find this IAA, IBA, and also these other two, 4-CIAAA and also PAA. These two we don't use it here. Okay, these only we use in special project or research. Synthetic auxin, you can find it in agriculture shop as well, 2,4-D, alpha NAA, dicamba, or picloram. Some of these are actually not used to promote growth for your crop, actually used for herbicide. I think you've seen this in your wheat sign, right? 2,4-D. Yeah, it's actually a type of auxin. Yeah, not for the good reason. Auxin to kill the weeds, right? Right. So depending on the variance of the auxin, they got their own characteristic. For example, IAA is broken down in sunlight. That's why it's shying away from the light. And then synthetic auxin, usually synthetic auxin kind of hardier, you know, not easy to be broken down by light. And they can be produced a lot in abundance and in cheaper manner, right? So you got synthetic type like IBA, NAA, and so on. Sometimes you can get both. You can get the same form in nature. You can get the same form in the lab, right? So pretty much everything can be produced in the lab, in the laboratory these days, right? Even your vitamin C. You know, if you go to the pharmacy, you are taking multivitamin, your vitamin C. You should know that vitamin C that you take, especially the cheap one, that's actually cement. Cement. For example, calcium ascorbate. Yeah, cement got calcium. Yeah. So are you eating cement? Yeah. Especially if you're talking about multivitamins, yeah. But not to say that tomorrow you're going to turn into KLCC. It has its own biochemistry to work in your body. Okay, site of auxin production. Usually in the apical meristem region, the shoot apical meristem at the tip of the shoot, and also the RAM, the root apical meristem. Young expanding leaf. Okay, this is important. When the leaf is fully expanded, auxin is very minimum there, right? But when it's young expanding, meaning that it has not reached its full physical potential, the auxin is still a lot because the cells are actively expanding, right? And also the young seeds, right? Okay, so this is just for your revision. I just put it extra there, right? Again, you will see that for my notes, sometimes I like to repeat things. That's actually not for me. That's actually for you, so that you do not forget. Do not forget. Right. Now, another symbol that you need to understand in sign is this symbols here. When you see these symbols, and then you see these symbols here, this is a universal symbol, means to promote. And this means to inhibit. Okay? And as you have learned, all growth regulators can be promoting and also can be inhibiting. Right? So you can see that auxin can be inhibiting or promoting cell elongation. Okay, the event, remember, at the beginning you learned about the function and process, right? The first lesson. Cell elongation is one event, or function of it. One process, cell elongation, meaning that the cell, it becomes bigger, but not due to the increase in number. It just becoming longer, elongation, right? So now auxin is present in two locations, one in stems, one in roots. Tell me, what happens to the stems when auxin is present to the event of cell elongation? Is it promoting or is it inhibiting stem's elongation when auxin is present? Okay, it will promote. It will promote. Meaning that this guy here, when it has more auxin, you are going to get more growth later. Right? But auxin, when it is a lot in the root region, look at the symbol there. It's to inhibit. And you will see that this opposite nature will be the basis of why the root bends, why the shoot would curve. Okay, so there are many other things: phototropism, gravitropism. Phototropism. Do you know what? Do you know what that is? Follows the light. It follows the light. Gravitropism is following the gravity. Phyllotaxis. You should learn this. Have you taken your botany? Right. What's phyllotaxy? Phyllo means leaf. Taxi means rank. How the leaf is arranged. I should bring. Where's the list? Ta-da! It's good to ensure people are waking up, right? Let's see. I feel a bit cancerous today. Any name with the cancer name? Anthracnose. That sounds cancerous enough. Let's go number 5. Prisika. Where are you? Okay. What is phyllotaxis? What's phyllotaxis? What's phyllotaxis? Phyllotaxy. Have you seen that word before? Pattern how? Have you seen that word before? No? Did you take your botany? If you've taken your botany, how come you've not seen that word before? Pattern of the leaf how? Sit down. You see, do not forget your previous semester's lessons. It's going to intercorrelate with each other. Okay? I cannot be a good plant physiologist if I keep forgetting all my botany lessons. That's the fundamental. Okay? Before I did my physiology, I did all botanical work first for many years. Okay? Phyllotaxy, it's phyllo, leaf, taxi, rank. So you have a few types actually. You can have alternate. So this is the stem, this is your leaf here, and this is your leaf here. And then you can have opposite. This is your stem, this is your leaf, this is your leaf here. Okay, and you can have whorl. This is your stem. Can have that, can have that, can have one at the back, or can have one at the back, and one here. The arrangement of the leaf, not the pattern of the leaf. Leaf arrangement pattern. Okay, alternate, opposite, whorl. That's the basic of it. There are quite a few more actually. Right? Please don't forget. I learned this like 20 years ago. Where were you? Where were you in 2005? 2005. Where were you? I think my lecturer already died. My lecturer at that time already old professor, 60, 70 years old. Right. Okay, that's in essence. This is the aging. floral initiation and apical dominance. We'll see in a bit. Right. Polar transport for auxin. So this is what I just explained to you ahead of time. Auxin. Oh, why I bothered to draw, right? You got all this drawing here. But it's alright. It's just to prove to you I'm not a scam. So you can see that this is the tip of the colleptile earlier. If you zoom in to look at the cellular level of it, you will see that the auxin produced in one cell and then they kept on moving in one direction with the help of this auxin carrier protein. Along this plasma membrane, you will see this, what is it? Dorayaki? I can read dorayaki, whatever lah. This purple bean-shaped structure. This is a protein, which is a carrier protein. Carrier protein, usually it's active transport. It requires energy, right? Because it usually facilitates the movement of bulky things across it. So definitely require energy. You can see that the auxin can be in its ionized form and also uncharged along the way. So that is to say that when auxin in the form of ionized form, A minus here, you can see that there are a presence of hydrogen along the way. And this will cause this environment to become acidic. Right? Right? Okay. So, and when you look at A here is basically this. That basipetal movement, acropetal movement. And it's kind of inverse when you go to the root region. Alright? So, even though you cut some portion of the plant and then you invert it, it will still follow this acropetal and basipetal. Meaning to say, auxin will always follow acropetal movement from, basipetal movement from the top to the base. Even though you have turned the plant upside down, it will still follow this. Because it doesn't really care about gravity. This is not gravitropism. Okay? Right. Right. So this, you have seen this before. Now I want to show you, because remember you saw this earlier. Something happened here, right? Cell elongation. This is the only one with double effects. In the stems, it's promoting, but in the root, it's inhibiting. So let's see why. So in the stem, it's promoting. This is the one of it. You have seen it before. You have light from one region. The auxin shine away. So the site with more auxin accumulation will become softer and grow longer than the brighter site, which stay the same. So that's why you get this curvature. So positive phototropism. But it has got another one to inhibit when it comes to root region. Why is it? So this is what happened. So auxin can actually be produced in the root apical meristem. Okay, somewhere in here, elongation zone, or it can be found from, it can be produced further up. But whatever it is, it will travel down. It will travel down. When it travels down, this IA, remember IA is a type of auxin. It stands for what? You are expected to know this name, okay? IAA, IBA, NAA. These three, you need to know the full name of it. IA, what's that? Indole acetic acid. IBA, indole acid. NAA, okay, so you got your IA here. When the root is following the gravity direction, pretty much going down straight, IAA will travel down using this conduit called stele or stele, depending how you pronounce it. It's basically a bunch of vascular bundle in cylindrical form. like a pipe going down, and then it will reach to this root cap region. You see, in the root cap, this IAA will accumulate in the middle, in the side. So pretty much the concentration is distributed along here. Plus, you have this structure called statolith. Statolith is from the Greek word lithos. Lithos means stone. Lithos, stone. So when this happens, the root is not going to bend, it just keep on going down. No problem. No problem. But once the root in horizontal orientation, then you will see the antagonistic effect of more auxin, less growth. It's opposite of the shoot. You see, this is what happened. So when the root is in this horizontal position, you will see that the auxin will come to this way, and it will be more concentrated in the region of statolith crowding. Where is crowding? Originally, statolith right in the center, right? But when you lying down the root on the horizontal surface, the statolith will go all the way there. So this will follow for the IAA as well. IAA will start to concentrate on the lower region. And what happened? When auxin IAA in the concentrated region here, the growth will be inhibited. What kind of growth? Cell elongation that you saw earlier. Right? So when this happens, the top part is the part that will grow longer, and given a time, the root will start to bend downward. Remember, okay, this is in the soil. No light. No light. Okay, there is no light here. It's simply following the statolith, the IAA. All right. So what exactly is statolith? Basically it's stones. Well, not really stone. It's actually granules of carbohydrates. It can be from the starch, from the amylose. For plants, statolith is used to determine gravitropism. Okay, so that's why you can see that it's bending. Do you have statolith? Do you follow any gravitropism? Yes. How? How do you follow gravitropism? You still stuck to the earth surface. That's not gravitropism. If you lift one of your feet, can you keep on jumping to all the way to the back? No? Who can do that? Lift your one foot, and then you keep on jumping all the way to the back. Please lah, I can do that. And I'm like, what, 20 years older than you? The thing is, can you balance yourself? No? Yes. All right. Okay, she hasn't got any stones. Cycling. Do you need to balance yourself? Yes. Maybe you are crossing using like a very narrow bridge. Do you need to balance yourself? Right. So balancing in you is actually being controlled by another lithos, but it's not otolith. It's not statolith. It's otolith. Otolith is in your ear. In your ear, there are some stones in your ears. So it tells the orientation of your body. This stone, a few stones, it will scatter across your brain, not your brain, near your brain, and tell in relation your 3D position. Are you lying down? Are you going straight? Are you going, backward, downward, and so on? So it's pretty much, the joystick. Yeah, pretty much that. Yeah. So in plant, it's called statolift. In human, it's called otolift. All right. So if you can't cycle, you can jump using one foot. Some stones might be missing from your ear. All right. Okay. Anybody can't ride bicycle? Right. Okay. So you have seen that auxin can have contrasting effects on the stem and also on the root. Let's see how can it elongate anything. So the short story is when auxin is accumulated. I'm talking about the shoot region now. When you zoom in here, you can see that this is your cell wall because it's a plant, and this is what? This is plasma membrane, right? And then this is your cytoplasm, right? So when auxin is present, it will stimulate this hydrogen pump, protein pump, okay? You see the pump here? It's a protein. Usually it won't be pumping anything. But the moment auxin is there, it will start pumping like crazy. What is pumping? Air. It will pump hydrogen ion, H plus here. So this H plus originally in the cytosol. Okay? But when the auxin is present, the hydrogen pump will start pumping hydrogen from the cytoplasm to the cell wall region, into this region, right? So more and more hydrogen will be present in the cell wall because auxin is present, causing the pump to pumping non-stop. So what will happen to the cell wall? Now the cell wall, you know that cell wall is made from various materials. It got cellulose, hemicellulose, pectin, and so on. These will cause all this to loosen. Okay, it's become acid. It start to loosen. When it starts to loosen, it will create spaces, right? These spaces will be filled in by water. When it's filled in by water, it's like a balloon. Then that's why it starts to swelling up. Then the cell will elongate. Yeah. So that is to say, auxin promotes cell wall softening and acidification. When the cell wall is acidic, it will soften. When it is softened, it can accommodate more water in it. More water gets in, it will become elongated. As easy as that. All right? Okay. Where else can you find acidity causing softening effect? In your tummy. Your stomach, is it alkaline or acidic? Very acidic, right? It can melt, it can make nails, right? You eat so many things. Only God knows what you put in your stomach, right? All the ramen, all the daikon, all the family mart stuff, all you put in there. Keep on eating non-stop. And these were very hard at one point. Like you eating crackers. Crackers is hard, you know. But because of this acidity, everything got softened up, right? Soften up, and then only the digestive enzyme like proteolytic enzyme, protease, lipase can work on it. So that's another proof, acidity softening tissue, just like what auxin does to cell wall. Right, okay. Right, so what else can happen besides softening effect by the auxin? Auxin can also, I don't want to go too much into this because this is a bit advanced, but it's good for you to know. Auxin can cause this thing, signal transduction. Have you heard that word before? Transduce. The word is transduce. Not to induce, transduce. Transduce means to change from one form to another. Okay, so this is a cell, right? Auxin is perceived by a receptor at the surface of the cell. You see, this is the surface of your cell. You got the plasma membrane here, and then at the plasma membrane, you got this receptor. Receptor usually a protein. So it senses auxin. So the receptor will create a cascade of signaling, meaning that the auxin do not have to get in. No, auxin does not have to get in. Just telling the receptor at the entrance, I've come, do your thing. So it will start to do the thing. What will happen? A lot of cascade of reaction, meaning that it will start to change one molecules to another form. Usually it phosphorylate, meaning that it causes the molecule to receive phosphate. And these molecules, it will start to cause other molecules to change as well. You see? A lot of things happening all the way until to the nucleus where the gene transcription is taking place. Right. So when this happens, eventually a gene is transcribed, translated by ribosome, and then at the end of the translation, you will get a protein. Right. So that's the short version of it. Do you see auxin go straight to the nucleus to do the transcribing event itself? No. So this whole thing is called signal transduction. A small amount of auxin is needed, just a small amount to create a big event. Right? Right? Okay. Have you seen the domino effect? In the video, like sometimes people, not only domino effect, sometimes they turn into like a very, very interesting art form. Just one movement causing all this big chaotic event to happen. You know, you can even blow out the whole house using only one movement. So that's the analogy for what's happening here. Right. Okay, additional responses to auxin. Apical dominance, parthenocopy, and also herbicide, which you should know because you just learned, right? Right. Let's see apical dominance. So apical dominance is basically, have you learned how to trimming and pruning? Right. Why do you trim and prune? To make the what compact? The what? Cool. Bushy. Okay. Yeah, that's right. You see the plant here. When you do your pruning and trimming, you cut off the top, right? When you cut off the top here, you might see that you have removed the apical meristem at the top. But you need to remember, plants have another type of meristem. It's usually on the side here. So this is called axillary meristem. Most of the time, axillary meristem will stay dormant. They are sleeping, not awakened. It will only awaken the moment the top is gone. Right. So what happened during pruning and trimming? When you cut off the top, these axillary meristem on here will be awakened. Once they awaken, given the time, the plant will start to grow in all directions instead of going up only. They will grow that way, this way, and it will give the bushy form. Right? So when auxin at the top is a lot, it suppresses, okay, inhibit who? Inhibit axillary meristem. Where? On the side, on the lateral side of the plant. All right. So why this is important? Well, in horticulture, this matter. That's why people from time to time they do the pruning and trimming. If they don't do this in orchard, fruit orchard, fruit orchard. Fruit tree orchard, they're not, horticulturists not going to get a good harvest next year. So regular trimming and pruning of the tree, especially after the season has ended, is actually very important if you want to keep your harvest bountiful next year. Right? Right. Okay. Another effect of auxin is parthenocarpy. Parthenocarpy, simply you are getting fruits without fertilization. The traditional concept is male, female come together, fertilization, and fertilization, you will get the fruit. That's the common concept of it. The ovary will become the fruit, the ovules will become the seeds. Okay, but what if this can be bypassed? This is what happened here. You see, the effect of auxin is to induce growth, right? So even without fertilization, it can cause the unpollinated flower, meaning without pollination, to grow into fruits, right? And bear in mind, parthenocarpy can be done by multiple hormones. Usually, horticulturists or agronomists, they use two, the combination of two. They use auxin and also they use GA, gibberellic acid. Right, because the combination of these two will ensure that not only that the fruit parthenocarpy take place to the maximum, but the growth of the fruits also optimally happen. Okay, you don't want the fruit to get initiated, but it won't get any larger. Right? I got one student for many years ago. I don't remember, was it verbally, was it in the written test? He said, this is analogous to Mary and Jesus. Jesus without... Jesus got daddy? Yes. No, earthly daddy, not daddy in the heaven. No, I think the student wanted to frying up the answers, trying so hard to answer something, you know, because I appreciate when you give the analogy to answer, that shows how much you have understood. But calling Mary and Jesus into your answer script to explain parthenocarpy, that's stretching it a bit too much. Right. Okay. All right. Right. So, is it important in agriculture? Yes, it's very important, because you can grow your plants completely in glass houses, even without the presence of pollinators. I give, for example, the grapes, for example, right? Grapes rely heavily in nature with the presence of pollinators, you know, bees, beetles, and so on. But if the grapes plant, the vineyard, in open space, you got lots of other problems. You got the weather problem, climate problem, pest problem, pathogen, and so on. So they wanted to grow in the glass house. But the problem with the glass house is, how do you want to invite only the beneficial insects? Right? So that kind of, yeah, that's not happening. So they use the power of auxin and gibberellic acid to obtain the fruit formation without fertilization. So thank you to auxin, right? And of course, in higher concentration, you can work as herbicide. These you have known because you just learned, so I don't have to explain so much. One example that you should know is this Agent Orange used in Vietnam War. So this is globally used as example, all right? Okay, the good example of the auxin variant is 2,4-D or 2,5,4-T, right? Or you can use the dioxin. That's also accepted, right? Do anybody like with science? It's all about killing something, right? No, it's good to have weed scientists from time to time, because weed scientists is not about killing, because usually weed scientists good chemist. You can ask weed scientists, if you have a fertilizer you want to deliver super optimally to your plant, usually weed scientists know how to, because the weed scientists know how to deliver the active ingredient to kill the plant. Now you brainwash your weed scientist friend, don't kill the plant, grow the plant. I have this active ingredient of hormone, deliver it to the plant. Yeah. It's all about perspective. Okay, that's pretty much about auxin. Yay. So next, gibberellin. I like to learn about this. It's called Bakane. You know, Baka, Shopee. Shopee. Baka. Jangan panggil kawan Shopee. Jangan. Your Malay friends tak faham. I do. Okay. Right. So, the second class, which is also important, the GA, gibberellin or gibberellic acid. Why? What's the difference, gibberellin and gibberellic acid? Gibberellin is usually the generic class group of the hormones or the growth regulators. Gibberellic acid means the compound now has hydrogen to it. Yeah. Sometimes it can be ionized form, non-ionized form that you have seen earlier. So different forms of it, right? Like the redox potential. That's why you see that some compounds like the formazan, right? The tetrazolium, the oxidized form, the reduced form. One is colorless, one is red. That's why. Right, so let's see about the story of Bakane, the story of gibberellin. So it was in about 100 years ago. These Japanese people, they detected something happening to the seed. Why is it called Bakane in rice? Because it likes to grow super fast and then it collapses. So that sounds. If you know you will collapse eventually, why grow so fast? Take your sweet time. Nobody is rushing you, right? Why you want to do so? It looks foolish, but this foolishness was actually caused by this fungus, Gibberella fujikuroi, which was stemmatic cell elongation and division. Sounds like a bad thing, but if you are a very optimistic person, you should turn problem into a solution now, right? So this is secreted by this fungus, and they name it, the compound first name it gibberellin from the name Gibberella fujikuroi. Okay, so there's also a secondary metabolite, the mycotoxins. But the thing is, before they got this gibberellin or gibberellic acid, they had to go through all these toxic compounds produced by this Gibberella fujikuroi as well. So it was quite some time before they could purify the actual compound of it. Right? So this is how it looks. The Bakane seed, foolish seedling. Regular seedlings, and then you got the super tall. Is it good or not? When plants growing too fast, it will not pay attention to construct the cell wall correctly. You see, the reason cell wall, the plant, even though plant, unlike you, do plants have bones or vertebrae? But why can plants stand taller than you, stronger than you? it's got this cell wall, right? It got cell walls, got the lignin. So this require times for deposition to happen. Okay, lignin even longer, but at least at the level of cell wall require calcium to deposit into it. Plant cells are not like human cell. You see, if you look under the microscope, your blood cell kind of scattered, right? Your blood is kind of scattered like that. One here, one there, one here, one there. But for the plants, it's actually fused to one another like this. Right? You see this fusion here? This is actually the connection between two cells, and this is actually a compound called calcium pectinate, from which people get the pectin to make jam. Right? So when it's growing too fast, the deposition of calcium pectinate cannot happen properly, so the cell do not have enough glue to stay intact firmly. So they grow super fast, they collapse super fast as well. Right? So no, that's not good. Right? So where is it synthesized? It's in the apical portion as well of stem and roots. You see, it's an apical portion. It's not necessary in the meristem anymore. No, it's just apical portion, meaning that many cells can produce it. It's important for stem elongation. Of course. So in cases hasten seed germination, which you should know this because you have done your seed, right? Right. And there are many kind of GA. I've said this to you. There are GA 1, 2, 3, all the way until, I don't know what number now, 55 I think. Right. All GA are acidic. That's why the name gibberellic acid. Right. And usually we use GA number 3. What happened to other numbers? We want to work as a compromise now. Maybe 1 is better, but GA kind of universally agreeable with many important crops. So roles is, it's a for cell elongation, and it works pretty much like auxin. However, it does not involve the cell wall acidification, right? And then it also involves in the breaking of dormancy. Remember from your dormancy breaking earlier, it breaks the dormancy upon the water imbibition. So it causes the hydrolytic enzymes such as alpha amylase to become activate, and then it will soften all this food reserve for the embryo to feed on. That's when you get your plumule and radicle growth, right? And also it's also for the promotion of flowering, especially for the plants that inflorescence bolting. You know bolting? Bolting. I need to rub this. I never have a good marker. Just need to go away. So sometimes you got your flowers like this. So this is called bolting. It's bolted, go up. And this is the inflorescence. So what plant usually like this? Cabbage. Cabbage, Brussels sprouts. Right. And gibberellin also, like I said earlier, also involved in Parthenocarpy. One good example is Thomson seedless. You can see that this is without GA application, and this is with GA application. Not only that it promotes Parthenocarpy, it also promotes the growth of it. How? You see GA, not only that it elongates the individual fruit, it also elongates the bunch of the fruit. These grapes on a bunch, right? It causes the bunch to elongate as well. So when the bunch elongate, each fruit has more room to grow, more room to breathe, more room to everything. So more space for everything to grow. So that's why the fruit become bigger. And also it reduces or slows down senescence, meaning that usually for 1 month, the fruit already becoming super ripe and senescing, but with the gibberellic application, it delays senescence, and therefore it can have on the shelf in the market for longer. But you don't use gibberellic and then spray on your face because you want to stay anti-senescence forever. I can show you one thing. Next morning, you wake up, you become this color. Yep. I think it's kind of making sense. If you are rushing in producing the fruit will not get any bigger. So when you're causing the plants to grow youthful for longer, more sugar can be stored into each of these fruits. Yes. Right. Okay, this you should know because you have seen this. Mobilization of reserve, germination, gibberellic, and abscisic acid. Abscisic acid is the inhibitor. When there's more gibberellic acid, abscisic acid will be shoved away. It's pretty much whatever when GA is present, it's causing the allurin layer to release the alpha amylase. Then alpha amylase will break down all this sugar in the endosperm, and then the sugar will be used by the embryo to grow radicle and plumule. Yeah. Do you know allurin layer? What is it actually? Do you eat rice? Yes. What color is your rice? White. Well, if you're super rich, your rice will be purple. Have you eaten brown rice? How does it taste? Do you like brown rice? The taste of brown rice? No. Why not?
Too healthy.
Too healthy? So you don't like the taste of healthy? This is taste too healthy. Throw away. Many do not know this because I taught rice production previously. Cannot understand why brown rice is. You see, in terms of processing, brown rice takes quicker to produce at the milling compared to white rice. But brown rice is more expensive. Why? Doesn't make sense. The steps that it would take to packing a brown rice is actually a lot quicker than white rice. When you get rice harvested, anybody have not seen rice plant before? Actually, many. Well, you'll be surprised. Actually, many have not seen rice plant before. Rice, it has its own jacket, the seed jacket. Okay, so we call it husk. The husk. So when you remove the husk, dehusking, you will get the brown rice. Okay, and the husk, it will go as an agricultural waste. So this brown rice is full of nutrient. Therefore, the longevity of the rice greatly reduced because many fungus will come to attack it. The shelf life will be greatly reduced. So that's why it's become more expensive because people need to pay more attention to the packing and also more attention to the storing. If they just keep the brown rice anywhere they like, the fungus will come because it's very, very, very tantalizing to the eyes and palate of the microbes and fungus. But if the brown rice proceed to the next step, which is polishing, then only you get your white rice. White rice, even though you have added one step, is lacking this hyaluron layer, and also there's another one thing, it's not said here, bran layer. This is the layer which is rich, super rich in vitamin B complex, and which is bioavailable. And polishing remove all of this, and the rice now becomes white, and this is what you are eating, right? So because white rice is without all this nutritiously seductive treat for the microbes, it's easier to store, can be stored for longer. So that's why it's cheaper in the market compared to brown rice, right? But is that necessarily more nutritious? Well, that's up for debate. It's true, brown rice got all this vitamin B, but it's also have all the heavy metals. Heavy metals like to stay in the hyaluron layer as well, in the brown layer. Yeah. You got the aluminium, cadmium, and so on in the soil. Yep. Unless you grow your rice using hydroponic, you know, at least you don't put aluminium in your hydroponic, right? Right. So what to do? Don't eat rice. Right. Okay, so come practical application of the gibberellin. So you got your bolting and flowering. So this is important, okay? Elongation of the internode. The target of gibberellin section is at this. You learn another one, another type of meristem, intercalary meristem. This is usually at the stem. Auxiliary meristem is at the tip of, at the side of the branch, right? Intercalary meristem, for example, like in rice, it's usually this stem in here. Intercalary meristem. But I mind you, not all plants have this intercalary meristem. So when the meristem is there, it can elongate this. Maybe at first it was only this tall, but now it can become this tall, thanks to this intercalary meristem. And what can activate it? Gibberellic acid. Right. So let's see here. So you have your rosette leaf, like the one I drew earlier, and it promotes the bolting, internal elongation just prior to flowering in beet, cabbage, and many plants with rosette habit. Rosette habit is this thing. Remember phyllotaxy earlier? How many of them? Opposite, alternate, and whorl. I said there's another one, right? This one, rosette. Rosette is another form of phyllotaxy. Okay? How I know? I know things, right? Right. Okay. So in bakane, that is not needed, but in cabbage, it is needed, right? Because the growth habit is different, right? Right. So that's pretty much about GA. What time now? I don't want to go too crazy about it. Sorry. Do you want to take 5? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Take 5. Take 5. And in complete sadness at night, and it was snowing. But because I already had a good command in English, what would take for regular student to finish in 3 semesters, I've finished in 3 months. All right. So you see, strong command of English will make you cut a lot of time and propel you faster. Right? Okay, everybody back? All right, okay, let's finish this cytokinin. Right, cytokinins. You should know this, I've already said to you. Cytokinesis. It's to produce cells. Right? Right. So the point that you need to know here, this is actually from this guy here, Scooch. Later on, if you take micropropagation, you know there's a subject, micropropagation. If you are interested with tissue culture, you are going to prepare the media for the tissue culture. That you will learn about MS media. You know MS media? I'll just tell you ahead of time. This is like a trailer for you. MS Media. In tissue culture, they use this pretty much for all. Then they put something else to modify it. But the base is this. MS Media. M's Murashige. And S for Scrooge. Whose name is it? Scrooge. That's the guy. Right. So they found that there are some compounds that actually stimulate cellular division. Okay, remember, okay, auxin actually involved with the cellular elongation. This cellular division means that mitosis. Okay, auxin do not cause mitosis to happen necessarily. Okay, it's just whatever is there, it's just make it bigger. Right. So it was first isolated naturally occurring cytokinin compounds in zeatin. Zeatin, remember somebody named Z-mice? Yes. Zeatins from corn, right? And also it's found in coconut milk, right? So it's found, it's pretty much everywhere, because as long as the cells are dividing, doing mitosis, cytokinin will be present, right? So the function from a cell division, morphogenesis, since you are struggling to recall from your botany lesson, I'll just repeat this again. Morphogenesis, morpho means form or shape. Genesis means the formation of. So when somebody says morphogenesis, the formation of form or shape. Lateral bud development, pretty much like the axillary meristem. So you can see now auxin and gibberellic acid, and cytokinin, they kind of come hand into hand as well. And also the delay senescence. So this is the effect overlapping with GA earlier, right? So the key concept, you got cytokinin, more mitosis. Mitosis, you got more cells. More cell means more plant growth. But if you don't provide nutrient, it's going to die as well. This is what happened to Bakane. It's growing too fast, but the fertilizer has not arrived. And it's dead. Right. So here's your tissue culture flask. So another terminology that you need to learn here is organogenesis, meaning the formation of organs. So usually cytokinin and auxin is what people play in the tissue culture, which is right behind this wall, the lab. They play around with it. Let's see. Oh, do you know what this is? This is actually, they are playing around with the ratio of cytokinin and auxin. This is undifferentiated mass, okay? Or they call it callus. Not careless, that's you. Callus. Careless is you. I'm talking about, see, I'm very truthful. I'm talking about callus. Callus is you. Right. So this undifferentiated mass, when you play around with auxin and cytokinin ratio, you can trigger it to form rooting or sprouting. Okay, you'll see it a bit. Don't worry about this. This is just yeah. This you should pay attention to. You can see that on the top, you got the concentration of auxin, which is increasing from 0 to 3.0. Usually it's milligram per liter or microgram per liter. And then on the vertical axis, you have the concentration of cytokinin. You can see that there's a lot of happening here depending on the concentration combination. You can see that at high concentration of auxin and high concentration of cytokinin, pretty much it's the callus. But the moment you reduce the amount of auxin, maybe half or 70%, you will start to have this formation of shoots. Yeah. High concentration of cytokinin, low concentration of auxin, you will start have these shoots coming on. But if you have a low concentration of cytokinin, but rather high concentration of auxin, you will get rooting instead. So depending on your goal, what do you want to use? Or what do you want to achieve? Is it rooting or is it shoot sprouting? Or do you just want to maintain it in the flask for many, many years? If you want to maintain it for many, many years, then go for super high auxin with medium or high concentration of cytokinin, right? This is the holy grail for the tissue culture industry. People are keeping this secret because it means millions and billions of ringgit, right? You know the secret for each plant species, yeah, you're making a big bucks, right? Can see that some of you like ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. This is the time you take out the cat that coming, calling the money to come. Okay, it also delays leaf senescence, aging and reabsorption of each plant. So on the right here, this is the regular plant. The moment it's bolting, you will see that the lower leaf, like in the rosette form, the moment it has bolted, the lower ranks of the leaf will start to die off. It starts to yellowing and browning. But in the transgenic here, it increases cytokinin biosynthesis. You will have, it's bolted, but you will have this lush green looking plant, which is abnormal. That's why it's called transgenic, right? If you read paper, you will see that sometimes with the gene, let's say that I'll rub this, okay? What's the if you are reading paper later, of course you will have to. You're going to do your final year. You will see that, let's say that the gene that you are reading about is cytokinin, right? CY. Let's say that this is the name of the cytokinin. If at the beginning here it says OE, this OE means overexpressed. This is what happened on the left. Overexpressed cytokinin. So usually this is the denotion that it uses. If it wants to say that this cytokinin has been silent or taken away, it will become like this. It will be italic. Yeah, it will be italic. No OE. I don't have the example to show now, but I just want to bear it because recently I found out there are PhD students who do not know this denotion. All right. So what do you get with that? If it's natural, you will get the full name of it. Cytokinin. No italic, nothing, just a regular font. Don't worry too much. I just told you ahead of time. If you ever read a paper, do you read a journal paper now? Don't think so. I started reading journal paper in my second year. Right. Ooh, what's that? Okay. So these are all the things that the cytokinin regulate. Okay. It looks very busy. It's true. It looks very busy. But the point here is to show that it's actually work in tandem with something else. Like you saw earlier with the tissue culture. The ratio of cytokinin with something else, this is the event that you're going to get. So it's pretty much the same with cytokinin relationship or interaction with other compounds. Okay, so let's see. Oh, pretty much that. There is that. Yep. Yeah, I think I better stop there. I don't want to go too much into it. Right. Okay. So should you worry about this diagram then? Can you look at this? You see, these are all in capital letters. What do you just learn? All in capital letters. That particular genes are being overexpressed, like this one. But if it's, let me see, is anybody in like this one? You see, that T is italic and small letter. That's actually a loss of function, a mutant. That's actually the second one. I'll give you the example. Yeah. In order to understand this, you cannot forget about your transcription, translation, the central dogma from DNA sequence to protein production. Or you have already forgotten. Have you forgotten? Okay, let's see how much you can remember. Do you remember codon? Codon, the 3 letters. Yeah, give me one stop codon. Let's see, who's going? You know, stop codon. Stop codon to stop the translation. You know, stop codon. Let's see. Siapa nak kena? Who's gonna get it? Enjoy sperm. Where? The group. Or you scattered about? Okay, fine. Let's go number 3. Yeah. I'm thinking, should I call that Chang Yuan? All right. UAA. Why it becomes the stop? Is that the only one?
No, the only one. And C.
Actually, I don't remember too. The thing with science is you don't have to remember everything, but you know it's there. Right. Stop codon, I learned it in 2004. Where were you?
1 year.
Where were you? Okay, so don't worry about that. All right, okay, I think that's pretty much for today, and we'll continue later for abscisic acid. Okay, before you go, please be on time on Wednesday because we'll do the auxin experiment. If you do it quickly, we can finish in 1 hour. Okay, because I need to go out station, so we need to move super quickly. And anybody want to show me lab report? You can do it now. I'm still here. Or if you want to do it, you can do it also on Wednesday. Any group want to show me your lab report? No? Nobody care. Fine. All right.
Something about the graph for this area. Do we need to include the whole or only the total from mean for the graph?
For the graph,